So I'm just getting the adaptive panel, the beam loaded into the project here. All these are pulled down from Moodle. Okay. And if you want, in order to see this shaded, you can flip it over to a shaded view. Of the components. So really a lot of what's going on in Dynamo is very similar to Grasshopper, and I think the script that we'll do today is hopefully going to represent some of that. So in order to bring geometry in, the containers and stuff aren't quite as simple. The first component to bring in the surface is called select face. That makes no sense, but it is what it is. Once you've got it in, then it gives you, it's sort of built in like when you right click in Grasshopper in order to go and select a piece of geometry inside a Rhino. In this case, we're going to hit select instance, and then I can select the, oh, that's awesome. No. Sure, why not? I'll just start walking you through it, and I'll see if I can get caught back up. So select face, and you're going to select, anybody else terminal? What's that? Really? Awesome. So did you guys select face yet, and it allowed you to select it? Okay, good. And you can see then it changes over to a change button that allows you to actually kind of swap them in. So what we're going to do is basically divide the surface up using really relatively the same kinds of components that we use in Grasshopper. So the first thing is to create a surface domain, which is basically going to just take a look at the surface as UV components. So it's also called surface domain, and again you can type it into the search bar at the top left-hand side there. And you'll notice here that the dragging and adding of components into one another is a little bit different. You got to click a second time, so you click on the output and then click on the input in order to drag two tags between one another. And then we're going to want a UV grid component. The UV grid is going to just take those U and V direction orientations and add them onto the surface. So you can take that domain coming out of the UV or out of the surface domain and put it into the domain on the UV grid. And then we're going to need some sliders. They don't call them sliders in Dynamo. They call them number sliders. Very different than Grasshopper. Not at all like Grasshopper. It's a number slider, not just a slider. You're going to want two of those. I would set the max to be 20 and go ahead and set the actual value to be 20 on each of them and plug those into the U and the V. Thank you. Okay. Let's see if we can get it to crash.
Do we need the panel in there as well?
As long as it's loaded into the project, it's fine. Try this again. Hey, nice. So, surface, domain. Boy, I have some difficulty double clicking here. Surface domain, then grid, UV, UV grid. So the search is not so good yet. Gotta get the name just right. Did slider actually show you anything? Oh, it does. And you can copy paste just like in Grasshopper. So we're actually going to want to take two of these at this point. One for doing the structure. The structure isn't going to be on every grid segment, and one for every panel. So we're going to do the structure on like every third grid segment, and then of course the panels will be on every set of 4 points. And we also have to, do some variation in terms of. So you can just copy paste that thing. We're going to have to do some variation in terms of the actual definitions, because they're all looking at points, and the structural grid is looking for 3, or the structural beams are looking for 3 points, and then of course the panel is going to be looking for 4 points across the surface. So in order to start adjusting this, I'm going to go ahead and there's a couple of ways you could do this. You can make another number slider. But basically the UV grid for the structure we're going to be doing down here, and the panels we're going to be doing up here. So this one we actually want to just do this UV grid as 10, the U as 10, and the V as 2. And so you can do that however you want. You can either divide it, or you can make a new number. You can make some new sliders, however you want to do it. So I'm going to do this as 10. And then copy paste it again to do it as 2. So now that we've got at least a grid going across here, I wanted to point out here under the view drop down, you can see that there's this showing background 3D preview and navigate background 3D preview. So in order to navigate this window, so that grid that's in the background that it's apparently sort of random is actually allowing you to see the preview of what you're looking at. But you're going to have to navigate it in order to do it. So if you hit Control G, then you can start zooming out. And I think we have to hit run maybe once here first to see this. So run is down here in the bottom corner. Yeah, there you go. So I'm actually navigating that window behind in order to see the surface. Let's see. And then Control G. Control G is the swap to go back and forth between looking at the preview and not looking at or working on the preview. And you'll notice that this little axis comes up when you're actually in the preview window. You might have to zoom out. You hit run?
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah, I'm not spinning. Right mouse?
No shift.
Oh, there we go. No shift. There we go. Just the right mouse button. And then Control G to get out of that. It takes a little bit of getting used to hit that Control G every time. Again, it's up under that view drop down. So hopefully you'll find it. Okay, so in order to get these actually put onto the surface, the next thing is to do an evaluate surface. So eval surface. All of these components are basically evaluate. You can't do evaluate surface. All of these are exactly the same names that you use in Grasshopper. So the UVs go into the UV component on that eval surf, and the face, the original face that we imported, goes into the face component. And you'll do one of those for each of these guys. Just swapping out the UV for the structure versus the panel. And you can hit run, and you should now see a series of components. When you have one selected, you'll see it turns light blue. And you'll notice here what's happening is that when we divided that surface, so when I select these three that I get, it's hard to see on mine, but or up on that projector, with the light blue dots in 3 locations. So we divided that surface in half. By dividing it by 2, it's actually creating 3 light blue points. And those are the 3 points that we're going to associate with those beams. Those beams are going to curve along using those 3 points. So that's why we have the division here is by 2. It's divided in the surface by 2, which results in 3 points along the surface. And then we're doing a structure half as often as the panel, so every 10. Everybody see that? So again, it's not the eval surface or the UV points that you're selecting here are divisions, not the number of points. So there's a bit of a kind of a shift there in terms of the way that you want to think about it. We're dividing the surface in 2, which results in 3 points going across the surface. Right? It's in 2 halves this way. That clear? And then the 20 by 20 is just the size of the panels all the way across. Anybody have any issues?
I'm not getting the light blue.
The light blue. Oh, you just select when you select the evaluate surface. Just click on it. Oh, you're in the technology.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. And then select.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have the script together, but it's not showing the image.
So you hit Control D. You want to use your left toe actually. You're just going to do that. And then you hit Control G and it'll go back into the interface. So right now you're looking at that temporary view, and then when you hit Control G, Control D again, pops back out. But your run is not sure. Let's see if it comes out once we start adding stuff. Okay, so now that we'll kind of focus on each of these 2 halves now, sort of looking at how we want to evaluate the geometry. Here we need to basically convert this grid into a set of quads. So we're actually going to use a thing called grid to quads. Grid to, grid, Anybody finding it? How did I write it down wrong? Quads. Oh, you suck. Panels, maybe? Panels? Oh, don't.
Surface create quad.
Oh.
XYZ grid?
What's that?
XYZ grid?
Yeah. Totally. No,
No.
that's not it.
Surface quad?
Yeah, where'd you get surface?
I just typed in QUA.
Let's try that. Surface quad, maybe. It's saying null. Ooh. Must have 4 points. That's what I want. I want something to give me 4 points. Oh man. What was it called?
Divide into distance XYZ.
Right, I'm gonna cheat. Grid to quads. That's what I said, right? Oh, I should have saved one. Let's do the structure first. How about that? So, slice list. Well, let's go down to the bottom. Oh, cheat. So coming out of your eval surface, evaluate surface, we're going to slice the list up by the number 2 that's coming out of this plus 1. So you can either add it or create a new number, but we're going to slice the list up into pieces of 3 so that it knows how to identify sets of 3 points to associate that beam. So the beam that came out of the conceptual mass needs to have 3 points associated with it in order to actually get applied to the surface, right? Everybody got that part? Yeah? Okay, so we need to just put the number 3 into what's called the slice list component. You're going to bring your list in, just like in Grasshopper, your list of points, which are those, the sets of 3. So that's going to be a long list, right, of points, just one set after another. We're going to use this slice list just to create sets of 3. And so you take the number 3 in as the letter N, and then take your list coming out of the evaluate surface at the bottom, this bottom set.
Our slice list is a little different.
It is?
It has 3, like, start count list.
Jeremy said something about it being updated to a newer version.
Oh,
They changed names.
bummer. I wonder what it would be called now. Because I don't think that's the right one. List. Partition list? Slice list. Split list. Yeah, no. Partition list. It is called partition list. This is probably my problem with the grid to quads thing. Is different version at home. I think it'd still be referencing the grid. It's funny the way that it writes the components for you. Well, let's get the beams made. So you're going to take the slice list, and then you put in what's called the select family type, and this is where we're going to associate that the beam. So select family type, and then they'll give you a drop down of all of the families that are in here, and you're going to want to go find the DYN08 adaptive beam, select that, and then the actual kind of baking component, or the thing that pushes all those out, is called adaptive component by points. And this is just going to take your list of points that are divided into sets of 3 from the partition list component. And those go in the XYZs, and then the family type goes into the adaptive components by points. Adaptive component by points. And you should be able to hit run. And see your beams.
The points is called XYZ.
I had element 186,431 became corrupt. Anybody get it?
Yeah, I don't think it shows in the preview in
It didn't preview it, but it made them
It showed it,
in Revit. Sweet.
Oh,
Surface or partition list?
That's right. Yeah. And then the number 3 goes into the number letter. Just dividing. It's just saying I want every 3 points to be put into a set.
So to put like a 3 slide?
Yeah, just a slider or a number, whichever.
To where?
So the evaluate list goes into the list. Yeah. Untitled Surface goes into the list. Yeah. Beam that around.
Still have.
They won't cancel. What? Try saving it and reopening it. Using your Revit. There's something going on there. Okay. Oh, that's right. We're going to select the base and the whole base. Fan list is not an adaptive. Oh, you just got this. Oh, that's right.
Can I make one?
Which part are you looking at?
What happens after evaluate survey? Maybe. Hey.
Happy days.
Anybody else? Yeah. Yep, that goes in the family type, and the list goes into the XYZ. And anything wrong? And the rest of us look at place that beam.
No, not really.
Yeah, it's hard. Okay, should do it now. They still didn't, it wouldn't let Revit run a command because you still had the load of the project open. Hopefully it was in the project and found it. If not, it would run it again. Okay. Get it done? What's it saying? Enable the cast object of function to type list. Okay. So, oh yeah, don't worry, delete that quad thing. And you're adding, you just want the number 3 going into that end. So, you can just make that number 3. Just, yeah, take it straight to that. Okay, that's right. Yeah, you can just, I mean, this just is doing it by using items and making a new number, but it's just a number. Okay. Got it? So conceptually, does it make sense what's happening here, right? We just got a bunch of points we made on the surface, and then we divided them up into subsets of 3. That's what the partition list did instead of the slice list. Once you get the partition list done, those slices then get just sent to each of the, or the beams get adapted to each of those 3 different sets of points, so they get drawn across the circuit. Now, we're going to figure out how to do this quad thing. Does this work? Maybe. So mine is still bombing out, but let's try that quad, this quad component. We might need to partition it into sets of 4, although I don't know that that's going to work. Like we want it to just take the
God, I keep wanting to double click in the.
What is that X connected to in the ad?
This ad is actually when it went into this grid to quads in the old version or the new version, whichever the version is that I have at home that we don't have here. The number 21 was going in, so it's taking the 20 from here, adding 1 to it in order to delineate the number of quads that it needs to divide by. And again, that's basically looking at the number of points along each side instead of the number of surfaces. So it might be that we need to do this partition list with the number 21, but I don't know. They can't find my panels anymore since it bombed out. Thinking hard. Anybody try to get that to work? The partition list going into the quads? Into the quad component? Mine's erroring out. The panel, yeah, so this is just up on the panel half of the set, right? And we're trying to get it to, I don't know what they've changed the name of that grid. It's the quads component to. I'll have to figure that out. Anyway, you get the beams working. You did part of it. Hey, Dynamo. It's a little glitchy, huh? There's a lot of dumb stuff in it too, like, you can make parametric stairs in there that aren't necessarily linked between different parts, but say could drive the levels that they're going to by changing the heights.